hands on new revenue, they don't dedicate it to deficit reduction, they spend it. What we need, the problem is not too little revenue. Revenue is the highest it's been in American history. The problem is not revenue. The problem is that we are spending money we don't have. Yes, sir, back here in the back.
My name is Tim Raybrant from Mount Sterling. Thank you for, when the government was shut down, thank you for turning on your auto reply. I wrote 2 or 3 emails to all of my congressmen during the, I guess it was the second week of October. I did receive replies from your office and from another office. I did not receive a reply from our most senior man on the hill, if you will. That was rather disappointing. And from that comment, my question is, it's rather sometimes a sticky question with our politicians, with our elected officials. Are you in favor of term limits? And if so, why or why not?
Not only am I in favor of term limits, sir, I introduced the bill. When I got to Congress, I campaigned on term limits. I campaigned on term limits, a 6-term limit in the House and a 2-term limit in the Senate. And I campaigned on it because of people like you, sir, who said they were kind of sick and tired of career politicians, and that we wanted people who were citizens and neighbors to go to Washington, serve, and then come home. And what people have been telling me is that, you know, if our leaders in Washington would start thinking about the next generation and not the next election, we'd be a lot better off.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir.
And to the point of the auto reply, I wish it was better than an auto reply,
Well,
and that you had had a more substantive answer to your email. But I'll tell you why we had the auto reply. During the shutdown, we had to furlough our staff as
yes,
well. So we'll get to your response. And
well, let me follow that up. You have since responded, and either you or your staff, and you have directly answered some of my concerns. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. And by the way, you know, the shutdown was very unfortunate, particularly for our federal employees. It wasn't fair to them.
Right.
They weren't at fault. The politicians in Washington were fighting one another. It wasn't their fault. So I did 2 things. I voted in favor of making sure we held them harmless when the shutdown ended, when they came back to work, so that their furlough wouldn't cost them and their family their salary. The second thing I did is I donated my salary to charity, to local charities, because I just felt like, look, if other people were going to have to lose their work during that time, and we hadn't done our job, frankly, in Washington, that I was going to help some of the local charities around central Kentucky.
Thank you, sir, for your reply.
Thank you. Dudley.
Andy, thanks for coming tonight. On a positive note, it seems to me for the first time, what I'm reading, that America could be energy independent, which would really help the situation. Some of the military things he's talking about, and there are spending overseas in certain areas of the world because of oil. Why hasn't politicians pushed that as a positive thing, using all sources of energy, such as coal, and the proper use, clean coal technology and things, and blend it in with natural gas and oil and everything that we're doing in this country? That would be something that America could take pride in again, and really solve maybe some deficit problems, some things. But I don't see anybody getting on the stage and pumping that as, which might be a workable solution. We seem to be trying to degrade it by shutting down coal. And I know gas prices are having an effect in that. But you worked hard in trying to help the coal industry, but there's more of that natural resource in America probably than any other. So.
Great point, and we are, we're not only touting it, we're voting in favor of more domestic energy production in this country, and we need that, and it is the solution. Yes, part of the solution is fiscal reform, fiscal restraint, doing the kinds of things that we need to do, but it's also about economic growth, and one of the ways we can grow our economy is through harnessing this energy boom that's happening across this country. The natural gas revolution that's taking place in this country is happening not because of the government, but despite the government. And this is a huge opportunity for our country to become North American energy independent within 10 years. It's within our grasp. We just need the will, the political will to do it. We need to have policies that promote it. And that means a true all-of-the-above strategy. The president likes to talk about all of the above, but he really doesn't mean it because he's discriminating against fossil fuels. And the truth of the matter is we could have 100 years of economic growth and energy independence if we actually maximized domestic energy production in this country. Think about the royalties that would come to the federal government if we allowed for development of our natural resources on federal lands. Imagine if we actually allowed energy companies to responsibly develop our resources offshore and in Alaska. What if we created instantly 20,000 new jobs by approving the Keystone Pipeline? What if we allowed for the use of coal for electricity generation again in this country and bring back those 6,200 coal mining jobs in eastern Kentucky? 230 years of recoverable coal left at current consumption rates. We're the third largest coal producing state in America. What's happening in eastern Kentucky is not a recession, it is a depression, and it's been manufactured in the West Wing. It is a disgrace. And it's a disgrace for our fellow Kentuckians. We enjoy some of the lowest electric utility costs in America. We need to direct our coal resources to electric generation. And by the way, responsible environmental regulations. If you go out to East Kentucky Power right here in Clark County and you talk to Tony Campbell and some of the folks over there and what they've done to promote environmental stewardship and clean coal and power generation that's responsible, it's really remarkable what they're doing up at the Spurlock plant up near Maysville. With the circulating fluidized bed technology, with the scrubbers. They can do it. We can produce electricity cheap, and we can produce it in an environmentally friendly way, and we can bring back those jobs for those coal miners. But before I move on, I've got to tell a quick story because it's about the people, and there's a human dimension to this war on coal that a lot of people don't recognize. If we had coal for electric generation and we used our natural gas revolution to convert our transportation industry and our fleet using natural gas, we could really become energy independent very, very quickly, which would have national security implications for us as well. But the war on coal does have a human dimension. I had our town hall meeting like this over in Campton back in August, during the August recess. And Campton, of course, is a new part of the district, Wolfe County. There's not a lot of active coal mines in Wolfe County, but there's a lot of laid-off coal miners. A lot of coal miners who used to drive to and from work down to Perry County and Knott County and Knox County and even over to Martin Pike County. And it was a town hall meeting kind of like this, and at the end of the town hall meeting, a young woman came up to me with tears welling up in her eyes. And she said, it's August, my kids are going back to school, but my husband has been laid off. He's a coal miner. His coal company couldn't get a permit from the EPA. And my kids need new shoes because they're growing up and they've grown out of their shoes. And so I've had to go out and buy them flip-flops so that they wouldn't be embarrassed. Now, this is not a partisan issue. I don't know what that woman's party is. I don't know if she's a Republican, a Democrat, and I don't care. It is wrong for the federal government, for unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats sitting in Washington, D.C. to put that Kentucky family in that kind of economic distress. It's outrageous. And we as Kentuckians need to stand by our fellow Kentuckians, promote Kentucky, and stop President Obama's war on coal.
Sparks. I'm with a reporter with the Winchester Sun. Right now, everybody's kind of looking over they're going through open enrollment, looking at health care, what's good for them. I know you've already made a couple of comments, but what do you foresee happening in January when all this goes into effect, and even in 2015 when the employee mandate goes into effect.
Well, I think a couple of things. You're seeing, and I'm hearing from my constituents a lot. I'm hearing massive disruption in the private health insurance marketplace. Huge increases in premiums. Small group plans getting their renewal notices for next year and the year after. Some of them, if they renew early, they can get a little reprieve. They can get only a 10 to 15% jump in their premiums. But in the next year, it goes up to 60, 75, 80, 100% increase in their premiums. So major increase in the cost of private commercial health insurance. Decisions by small businesses to give up, basically. Even though it's been a tradition to provide high-quality health care benefits for their workers, and they want to keep doing it. But they're going to give up, they're going to pay the fine, and they're going to dump their employees into these exchanges. And for some of those employees, they might get a subsidy in the exchange, but they're going to get an inferior product. They're going to have higher out-of-pocket costs, and they're going to have to, in many cases, go into a smaller network where they will have a real risk of losing their positions. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal earlier this week. A woman from California had a stage 4 bladder cancer, and she lost her job-based health insurance or individual policy, whatever it was, and she was forced into the California exchange. And because the network was so small in the California exchange, she was going to have to choose between her primary care physician team and her oncologist. And she said, and I don't want to be too overdramatic about it, she said it. She said this was a matter of life and death for her. And again, the government shouldn't be hurting people. The government should be helping people. We shouldn't make it harder on people. We should make it easier on people. And Obamacare is creating massive disruption. Now, do we need health care reform in this country? Of course we do. We need to deal with the pre-existing condition problem. We need to deal with the rising cost of health care. But we need to do it through patient-centered reforms, not by turning over 1/6 of the American economy to federal bureaucrats. You know, think about our rural hospitals. We've got representatives from our hospital here tonight. Rural hospitals are under attack because of the Affordable Care Act. The only way that they're going to be able to finance Obamacare, the expansion of Medicaid and the subsidies and the exchanges, is by raiding Medicare. Cuts to $716 billion in Medicare. Cuts to dish hospitals, to rural hospitals. That's what they're doing, is they're raiding Medicare to fund Obamacare. And I've had rural hospitals all across central Kentucky and eastern Kentucky come to my office, some of them coming all the way to Washington, D.C., and pleading that, you know, we've got to stop these draconian Medicare cuts because we're not able to provide the same level of service to our patients. And one administrator said, you know, I used to take care of patients, and now I take care of paper. That's not right. So that's what I foresee. I foresee a considerable disruption out there, and I'll tell you, the administration is going to have a big problem if they can't get this website fixed, and millions of Americans are losing their health insurance. They're getting cancellation notices. They're not going to have health insurance beyond December 31st, and there's no other way to sign up for insurance. You talk about a massive, if you think Obamacare is unpopular now, wait till January 1st. Hunter.
Are you on the Medicare that you're talking about? I understand a lot of the Medicare money is being pulled out to support Obamacare. And all this TRICARE money, which was used to support your veterans in their retirement or a medical bill, is going out the window. Pretty soon you got a bunch of veterans that don't have any Medicare either. And you're gonna have a big problem. Where are they going with this? I mean, it's going over here to Obamacare, and they can't even get a main operation right now, much less where us veterans are going. And we spend a lot of time defending this country in a lot of places. I was in Southeast Asia on 2 or 3 occasions. And it's really something to see. You should have your medical bills paid for. But the way it's going, we're not going to have anything. And maybe you got a comment on that.
Well, again, Mr. Hess, thank you for your service to the country as well. And it's absolutely true. I mean, this is one of the problems with the Affordable Care Act. I'll go back to something that I said earlier, that, you know, in divided government, the only way forward is through negotiation and compromise. One of my Democrat colleagues, he's a friend of mine, a freshman Democrat colleague, said to me, his name is Joe Kennedy, he's the grandson of Robert F. Kennedy, he's a freshman member of Congress. He's a friend of mine, and a good guy. He and I don't agree on much at all. But, you know, what he said to me was pretty interesting. He said, you know, this Obamacare that you all hate so much, this has been a project of the Democratic Party for 50 years. He said, this has been the lifelong ambition of my family. We're not going to change this in the first month of its implementation, and you just got to get over that. So what that tells me is that they're going to fight hard, really hard, to keep this thing with no changes. But the circumstances of the policy of this legislation, it's so bad that they're going to have to fix it. And so what I think what could happen is that if these cancellations continue and they can't fix this website, which, by the way, the software expert McAfee says is a hacker's dream, and that no personal information is protected on the site.
Yeah.
What they're going to have to do is they're going to have to delay or suspend the individual mandate penalty, because it's not fair to punish people for not having health insurance if you can't sign up for the exchange. You can't sign up for health insurance. So the circumstances may compel a negotiation and a compromise on the Affordable Care Act for Obamacare. Yes, sir, right here.
My name's Tony Calvert, here in Winchester.
Yes, sir.
You were talking about the lady in California. I have stage 4 aggressive mantle cell lymphoma. I lose my health insurance January 15th. I'm on my last medical leave. I mean, I have been to the Social Security office. I have talked to the people at Medicaid. There is nothing available for people like me who have paid in since they were 14 years old. They have the printouts. But yet I go in and I'm turned down and told, okay, you have a fatal disease. You're in stage 4. I've been in 11 months of treatment. And then we got this Obamacare thing coming up. I got online and I looked, it's $1,857 a month for a man 57 years old. I mean, what am I supposed to do? I mean, I lose my job, I lose my income, I lose my insurance, I lose everything. Where do people like me go? What do we do?
Well, sir, I'd like to talk to you and see if we can work with you. We'll try everything we can for you, and if you'd like to stick around afterwards, talk to some of our staff, we can get more information from you and see what we can do. I tell you what I would do just off the top of my head. I've got some folks who are health benefit consultants who I'd like to talk to them about your case, and you get you in touch with some of them.
The lady at Family Services told me, said, Mr. Calvin, said, you're wrong. Said, we've never seen no figures like this before. I said, okay, here's my paperwork. There's your computer. You show me where I made a mistake. She come up the same number I did.
Yeah. Well, it may be the case that we can't find a better solution for you, but we'll try. So if you'd like to stick around afterwards, sir, we'll set you up with some of our staff to try to help you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Do you have a solution for the hunger in Kentucky? Our children who are going to bed hungry at night. The hunger.
Yes.
With SNAP, I think,
Yes.
the sequester, I think it took, like what, 5 million for all that? I don't know, you might know better than that.
ma'am.
But do you have a solution for our hungry children in Kentucky?
Yes, ma'am. Great question. And so the lady asked about food stamps and reforms to food stamps and through the sequester. How are we going to do? What are we going to do to tackle hunger? I think the fact that the last 10 years in our country we spent something like $540 billion in food stamps, and then the projected cost of food stamps in the next 10 years is $740 billion, underscores this president's terrible economy. The fact that so many people in this country have lost jobs through the war on coal and other bad policies is indicative of the fact that, we've got people in this country who are struggling, including the constituent of mine over in Wolf County, who has to probably resort to food stamps instead of using her husband's paycheck to be self-sufficient and take care of himself and his family. So I think number one, we got to focus on getting the economy turned around so that people don't have to depend on food stamps. But I want to say something else about some reforms that the House enacted on food stamps. There's been a lot of misinformation about reforming the food stamps program. I went to God's Pantry and I visited with our food banks, and I visited with the president of the Kentucky Food Bank Association, because they wanted to share with me the issue of hunger in Kentucky, and it's real, and it's a problem, and we need a safety net. And this is a generous country, and hardworking taxpayers in this country are willing to support a generous food stamps program to help people when they fall through the cracks and when they're in need. And so many of us in this room contribute voluntarily to food banks, especially around Thanksgiving time, to help our fellow man, and that's the right thing to do. But at the same time, we've got to realize that we need a sustainable food stamps program. We need a food stamps program that actually makes sense, that actually removes the impediments to self-sufficiency. And so the reforms that were enacted in the Farm Bill and independent of the Farm Bill in the House of Representatives, and I voted for these reforms, were threefold. Number one, it ended the categorical eligibility, meaning that automatic enrollment, if you receive $1 of public assistance somewhere else, you used to be, or you currently are automatically enrolled in food stamps. Even if you don't qualify under the income and asset test in the statute for food stamps. So what we do is the reforms that passed the House would take that away, would take away categorical eligibility, but it would mean that no one who meets the income and asset test for food stamps would lose their food stamps. They would still get their food stamps. If you qualify under the income and asset test, under the statute, you will still get food stamps. The second thing that our reforms do is it says we're not going to spend hard earned tax dollars on advertising agencies and marketing companies. Billions of dollars are spent on advertising agencies and marketing companies to advertise for food stamps. Those tax dollars should go to people who actually are in need, instead of going to fund an advertising campaign to enroll more people onto food stamps. And then the final reform we make in this reform is we say that if you are a working age person, if you have no disability, if you're able-bodied, and if you have no dependents, no children, then in order to remain on food stamps, in order to qualify for food stamps, you have to either have a job, you have to be actively looking for a job, or you have to be in some kind of job training program, say right here at PCTC. Now that is a very reasonable requirement, and it's actually the most compassionate policy, because what we want is we want these people to become eligible not for food stamps, but for a paycheck, because that's the most compassionate policy, self-sufficiency. Jack, over here.
Jack Jones, resident here of Winchester. Congressman Barr, both of us kind of look at Washington, we think it's broke. We think it's seriously broke. It used to be we all learned in civics class that the House of Representatives would start the spending bills, pass the bills, the Senate would take them up, they'd go into committee, they'd talk about things, they'd issue bills back out and sign. It seems like today those committees never happen. So many things start in the House, good things you talked about today, they just die. We got a president that doesn't want to negotiate. We have the head of the United States Senate, Harry Reid, doesn't want to negotiate. He just refuses to bring things up, and things never get to committee. Is there any way this can be kind of put back together? Do we compel the Senate to take up things? I'm sure there's not, but it seems like something ought to be done there.
Well, most members of Congress, including myself, have never seen what's called regular order. Regular order is the way that the Congress used to operate, meaning that Congress passed individual appropriations bills. First of all, they passed a budget, and then when they passed the budget, both the House and the Senate, then they went through reconciliation to reconcile those budgets, and then through a reconciled budget, they would pass separate appropriations bills. And then those bills individually would go to a conference committee where the differences would be ironed out. And they'd go back to the House and Senate and they'd be voted on. That's called regular order. Well, nowadays, because the Senate refuses to pass a single appropriations bill, the only way to fund the government is through a continuing resolution, which doesn't change underlying policy. All it does is continue the previous policy. That is not the way to run or reform the government. So the House, nevertheless, has gone through regular order. We passed 4 individual appropriations bills, and we would have continued, and we want to get back to that. And Chairman Rogers, the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, my colleague from Eastern Kentucky, he's dedicated, and he wants to go back to regular order and pass individual appropriations bills. You know, one other comment about that, Jack. There was a lot of criticism during the government shutdown of House Republicans about the government shutdown. But in truth, what House Republicans were doing was going back to regular order. We were passing individual funding bills the way it was supposed to be done, instead of a huge omnibus continuing resolution, which is a massive funding bill that doesn't change any underlying policy.
But other than changing the United States Senate majority, is there anything going to be done about it? Is there anything that can get that back into that regular order?
I think the best thing that we can do is we can do regular order and expose the Senate for failing to do so. So, you know, we've done it. We've started the process. The chairman says he's dedicated to continuing to pass individual appropriations bills instead of these massive CRs, so we'll see what happens. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Jane Friedman, and I'm from Lexington, and I was a founding member of the Veterans Coalition. I'd like to invite all of you to come. It's nonpartisan. You're not under a rock like your predecessor was. And this man is out in this area. I'd just like for him to share. Everybody's talking about Washington, the state. I would like him to share about the 6th District and what his office did about the American flag for the veterans. Would you share briefly about that?
Sure, Jane, thank you. So this coalition it's not about me or my congressional office, it's about the veterans. And what we wanted to do is create a platform for veterans to help veterans and connect veterans with one another so that they could be advocates for themselves. And we're a liaison to them. If there's a particular problem that comes up in the course of their discussions about, you know, a problem that veterans are facing, then they have a ready vehicle to come to talk to us so we can be an advocate for them in Washington or wherever. So one of the issues that came up in our Veterans Coalition, this was an issue that we didn't know there was a problem, but because we had this Veterans Coalition meeting, several veterans brought to our attention that when we have these situations, these tragic situations where one of our heroes is killed in action and comes home, that there is a duty, there's a responsibility, frankly, for our country, and in this case the post office, to have an American flag for that coffin, for that hero, to be welcomed home with honors with the colors. And we had a situation, regrettably, where one of our fallen heroes returned to our country and the post office had run out of American flags for this particular fallen soldier. And so we didn't want this to ever happen again. And the Veterans Coalition brought this to our attention. So we worked with the post office. They were very apologetic. They said it was never going to happen again, and they restocked that particular post office. But what we did was we had a backup plan, and we procured some American flags so that in a pinch, if anything like that happens again, we will be there. We will be on the ready. Our congressional office will be ready to deploy that American flag.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Oh, you've already asked the question, but go ahead. You've earned it. You've earned it.
Apologize for asking 2 questions, but it's also 2 questions again. Mom's very defensive. So one question I had was, in your opinion, how does the government justify the billions of dollars that goes to Afghanistan citizens, not the military or NATO or anything like that, but the citizens that get this money, that from firsthand experience, obviously does not use in any manner that we would consider spending money normally, because their whole lifestyle is completely different from ours. What is your opinion on that, and is that something that you think can be righted? And the second question, unfortunately, is kind of similar, but there's kind of this rumor that's going around in the military community. Is it true that our active duty military's funding and paychecks are going to be cut? Because I'm not by any means greedy with wanting more money, but I do acknowledge the fact that compared to what I do for a living versus some other jobs in the world, the comparisons in pay is pretty drastically weighed out of our favor. So those two questions are kind of one that's really weighed on me.
Just to address the second one first, I'm not aware of that, but we need to monitor that for you. And we'd love to talk to you and make sure that you're in communication with Sergeant Eric Landis in my Washington office, who is in touch with the House Armed Services Committee, so that we can watch that and military pay issues for you. On the second issue, it's a similar, I would recommend a similar course so that we can be an advocate for you. We'd be happy to make an inquiry to the Pentagon for you, or through the House Armed Services Committee, to talk about what some of our policies are in Afghanistan, whether it's psychological operations, which Sergeant White is very familiar with, or how we're actually trying to win the hearts and minds of some of the folks in Afghanistan or in other countries, and whether or not those are actually worthwhile programs, and whether that's a good use of taxpayer dollars. You've been there, you've been on the front lines, you know this better than us. So what we'd like to do is give you a voice and ask those questions for you. And hopefully we can get some more answers whether or not this is a worthwhile expenditure. So stick around. Let's talk to Tyler. Let's get you in touch with Eric Landis in our Washington office. Okay? Thank you. One more question, and I think a gentleman, this young man right here. Yes, sir.
Well, thank you for what you are doing for Kentuckians in America. Now, when I came in here tonight and saw how many people were here, I almost thought, I must ask the question, is there a doctor in the house? A lot of people need health care, and they need it affordable. And my question is, would it be appropriate for someone in the House or Senate to call for a vote to cancel Obamacare? In my opinion, it has become Obama don't care. Where is all the members of Congress and Senate who have a voice for us? But it seems there's only one voice in Washington, and he's there every day. And somebody needs to call on him, call his hand on no bid for all this big computer job, when he has been very critical of American businesses for sending jobs overseas. He did it, and I haven't heard a word. Thank you for what you do. I supported you completely in this last campaign, and I really do. You just keep on thinking Kentucky and working all America. I don't know where I introduce myself or not. I'm Bob McCray from Lexington.
Thank you, Mr. McCray. Thank you very much, and appreciate those kind words. Obamacare is a concern to so many Americans, and we're going to continue to hold those oversight hearings. We're going to be back in Washington next week, where we're going to be holding hearings about all of these millions of insurance cancellations. uncovering the broken promise that if you like your health insurance, you can keep it. That's clearly not the case for millions of Americans, for hundreds of thousands of Kentuckians. And so, the best thing we can do is continue to expose Obamacare for the bad policy it is until we can get the changes that the American people deserve. So I think we've run out of time tonight, but I want to thank all of you for your participation here tonight. And let me just conclude by saying this. We heard some different opinions and views tonight. Different people have different ideas. Washington is divided. Our country, in some respects, is divided. But what you're doing here tonight matters. This is really important. And I'll leave you with this one thought. And that is that, a lot of veterans in this room. And the honor of all honors for me to represent you in Washington is to serve and welcome our veterans to Washington when they come to see our memorials. And I've had a couple of occasions to welcome these honor flights of our World War II veterans. These are 90-year-old men in wheelchairs, right? We're losing the greatest generation by 10,000 a day. And these men are flown up to this charitable organization, this honor flight, and it's wonderful. We get, as members of Congress, to greet our constituents, these 90-year-old men in wheelchairs, and many of them are weeping, thinking of their fallen brethren from the war, 60, 70 years ago. And they see the World War II memorial. They fought and they sacrificed for this country. And so we owe it to them to secure the freedoms that they fought and died for. That's why this matters, and that's why I'm committed to this cause of saving this country, and I really appreciate all of you all for participating in tonight's forum. Thank you very much.
See ya.
Great. How was this crowd compared to Versailles? It wasn't quite.
What?
This crowd wasn't quite the same as Versailles, huh? Very.
We're in an aisle.
Yeah, I mean, Versailles, no.
He walked through the window, you gotta go out the door.
See ya, Andy.
See ya.
Bye.
Thank you. Hit the door. You pushed the button, I guess.
She right.